2, 1.
I am Dr. Gwendolyn Zoharah Simmons, a veteran of the historic civil rights and Black Power movements of the 60s and 70s. I began my organizing work with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or SNCC as it's known as, during the student sit-ins as a college student at Spelman College in Atlanta in 1962. And then I went on to work as a SNCC field secretary in Laurel, Mississippi during Mississippi Freedom Summer in 1964 and continued with the organization until 1967. I currently am a professor in the African American Studies and Religious Studies departments at the University of Florida in Gainesville. I have spent the last year engaged in the organizing of a new civil rights organization, the National Council of Elders, which was called forth by three well-known veterans of the civil rights and human rights struggle for peace and justice in this country. They were Reverend James Lawson, Dr. Vincent Harding, and Reverend Phil Lawson, all three of whom have deep civil rights resumes. Reverend Lawson and Dr. Harding worked closely with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. throughout his civil rights career. The National Council of Elders was formally organized at our founding meeting held July 29th through August 1st, 2012, when over 24 veterans of the civil rights, women's, peace, environmental, LGBTQ, immigrant justice, labor rights, and other movements of the last 60 years came together in Greensboro, North Carolina, the birthplace of the sit-in movement in 1960, to birth a movement that, God willing, will share the torch of freedom, justice, peace, and nonviolent action with those who have risen anew in the 21st century. While in Greensboro, the group decided to write and to announce to the world a statement on the profound issues facing our country that are largely being ignored in this election campaign. We are calling our statement the Greensboro Declaration. At 11 a.m. today, members of the U.S. National Council of Elders presented the Greensboro Declaration in 3 cities: at the Martin Luther King Memorial in Washington, D.C., in the famed Zuccotti Park in New York City, and at the historical New Bethel Baptist Church in Detroit, Michigan. Signers of the Declaration include people like Harry Belafonte, Danny Glover, Dolores Huerta, Bernice Johnson Reagan, Shirley Sherrod, Rabbi Arthur Waskow, Grace Lee Boggs, and many others from the movements of the 20th century. We are releasing our statement after both the Republican and Democratic National Conventions, believing that following the presentations by national representatives of these parties, it would be important to offer individual citizens and community groups an opportunity to voice our concerns and our demands. As we state in our press release on the launches of the Declaration, we are moved by a shared sense of national and global crisis and the resultant suffering being inflicted on millions of people in our nation and around the world. As this statement will attest to, our country is gripped by an interlocking, multi-layered economic, educational, social, political, and moral crisis. And this is part of a worldwide crisis that reflects the end, we believe, of the industrial era. We speak in this time of crisis out of our commitment to justice and nonviolence, and to add our collective voices to the unfolding conversations of this historic moment. The members of the council speak out of thousands of years of combined experience of working for the betterment of this nation and this world. We say a number of things in our declaration, which you will find in its entirety on the website. We are very concerned about efforts to curtail voting, particularly of minorities, young people, and the elderly. As we say, voting is an important tool of democracy, which must be more fully utilized, not curtailed. And we strongly urge all citizens to vote in the coming election and to intervene when necessary to ensure the rights of all to vote. In our closing statement, we say, we raise our voices against violence and the ways in which it pervades our national life and obviously life across the world. The acceptance and propagation of violence has been, unfortunately, an essential part of the national culture, from the dispossession of the native Indians and Mexicans of their land to the enslavement and exploitation of Africans, Chinese, and others, to contemporary wide-scale police brutality and massive incarceration. Our deeply rooted culture of violence is increasingly taking the form of targeted as well as random murders. It is entrenched in all of our institutions and systems. It unfortunately characterizes our international engagements, including interventions in third world countries to seize control of resources and the support of dictators who support U.S. interests and oppress their own people. The United States government instigates wars of aggression where there has been no threat to our country, and now, to our great dismay, uses drones as an even more insidious form of war and the culture of death. Those in power have abused and exploited the environment rather than coexisting with it or practicing a mindful stewardship. This will to exploit, which does not take into account the ways the earth may be destabilized, has brought us to this environmental crisis that we face today, including the massive pollution of our air and water resources, global warming resulting in climate chaos, and other threats to the ecosystem of our planet. So in response to this and all of the other issues that we lay out that we are gravely concerned about, we are urging all citizens and residents to help us make this declaration a living, growing reality by discussing it amongst diverse organizations and individuals, including your own family members, young people, workers, teachers, professors, scholars, community groups, and religious faith communities. Further, we invite all of you to sign on to this declaration or to produce your own declaration. For as we declare and live into our revolution of values, we will also be creating a lively national alternative to the multi-million-dollar super PACs that increasingly endanger the entire democratic process. We close our declaration by saying, finally, as elders, we pledge to our nation, and especially to our younger brothers and sisters, that we will be faithful to our own history as human rights workers. We will undertake with you the work we have called for in this statement as fully as our lives allow, doing everything in our power to bring a greater measure of justice, equality, and peace to our country and to our world.